Clarissa, written by Carol Taylor, illustrated by Itoko Maino. Hi, I'm Melissa Radley, and I will be reading Clarissa. This book is about a plain brown cow who allows herself to be pushed around by all the other animals on her Wisconsin farm. She helps a group of lost domestic animals find their way to the fair and demonstrates that she is bright, brave, and creative. This book includes factual information on Wisconsin farm life, dairy products, and fairs. "Move over," Clarissa demanded Fiona. "I want some of those blackberries, too." Fiona was a big black white and Holstein, and Clarissa was sure the bossiest cow in Wisconsin. "Oh, Clarissa," said Tessie, "I bet you found those sweet, juicy berries just for me, but I must have more room, dear." Tessie was a beautiful brown and white Guernsey and very self-centered. Now Clarissa couldn't reach any blackberries at all for herself. Fiona and Tessie were always pushing around Clarissa. They nudged her away from the sweet patches of clover she found. They crowded her from the shade of the old oak tree. They shoved ahead of her at the feeding trough. But Clarissa never complained. It seemed to her that you had to be big and bossy like Fiona or Tessie to get what you wanted. And she was neither. Clarissa was just a plain brown cow. Early each morning, Fiona, Tessie, Clarissa, and the other cows on the Larson farm were milked by Mr. Larson and his son Pete. Through the long summer mornings, the herd gazed in the far pasture, settling down in the afternoons to chew their curd. No one dared disturb Fiona as she thought her bossy thoughts, or Tessie as she gazed at her pretty reflection in the water. But things were different for Clarissa. The sheepdog ran circles around her, pretending she was a flock of unruly sheep. The noisy cowbirds hitched rides on her broad, strong back as she ambled across the pasture, and pesky bluebottle flies swarmed around her patient brow. There was little time for Clarissa to think her own thoughts or dream her own dreams. In the evening, when it was again time for milking, Fiona led the way back to the barnyard. Tessie came behind her, always careful to keep her dainty hooves clean. Clarissa followed, even though she was clever enough to find her own way home. Mr. Larson greeted the cows as they came through the gate. "Good job," he praised Fiona. "Hello, my beauty," he welcomed pretty Tessie. "Get a move on, old girl," he said as he swatted Clarissa on the rump. Clarissa wished that just once she could be the special cow, praised instead of pushed around, but she moved obligingly through the barnyard gate. Pete, at least, was kind to her. "Clarissa is such a smart cow," he told his father, "and she is so good and gentle." "I'd rather be beautiful," thought Tessie. "I'd rather be boss," thought Fiona. One hot August morning, when the hay had been mowed and baled and the corn was sky-high, the usually quiet dirt road running past the Larson farm came alive. Through the dusk, Clarissa could see loads of lumber and bright canvas, bouncing pigs and chickens, wide-eyed horses and cows, all disappearing up the neighboring lane over the hill. "Stop that commotion," bawled Fiona. "My pretty coat is getting dirty," worried Tessie. Clarissa watched in silence. She was remembering other Augusts when the tassels on the tall corn turned brown in the sun and the road became a cloud of dust. "It's the fair," she whispered to herself. The next morning, right after milking, Pete hauled out the hoses and buckets of soapy water and bathed Fiona and Tessie. He brushed their coats and combed their tails. As his father polished their hooves, Pete braided a yellow ribbon into Tessie's hair and hung a shiny brass cowbell around Fiona's neck. "I think Tessie and Fiona are going to win ribbons this year," Mr. Larson said. "I hope so, Dad, but what about Clarissa? Can't she go to the fair, too?" "It takes something special to win a ribbon, Pete, and Clarissa's as ordinary as her plain brown cow face. She's just not the kind of cow that gets taken to the fair." Later that morning, alone in the far pasture, Clarissa stared into the pond and grew angry at the face she saw reflected there. "Why can't you be more like Fiona and Tessie?" she asked herself. She didn't want to be bossy and stuck up like them, but she did want others to look up to her. She wanted to be loved, and she really wanted to go to the fair. I'll never be anything but the last cow through the barnyard gate," she said. 2 big tears rolled down her soft nose and plopped into the water. Just then, Clarissa heard a small voice. "Maybe we should ask her to help us." Turning her head, Clarissa saw a rooster, a duck, a floppy-eared rabbit, a goat, and a huge red and white spotted pig. "How could she help us?" snorted the pig. "Look at her. She's nothing but a plain old brown cow." The other animals ignored him. "We ran away from the fair," said the rooster. "We've been playing all night," chimmed the duck. "We have to get back for competition," cried the goat. "But we're lost," wailed the floppy-eared rabbit. "Oh, I'll get us back," said the pig. "Just give me time to think." Clarissa was tempted to let him try. "I should just let him get everyone hopelessly lost," she said to herself. "If I can't go to the fair, why should they?" But Clarissa knew that helping would be the right thing to do. "I certainly know the way," she thought, "and this once at least, everyone would be following me." "I can show you the way," she said. "Come along, it's not far." Clarissa led the lost animals over the pasture, past the pond, around the blackberry bramble, and down the lane to the gate. The rabbit scampered under the gate, the goat bounded over, the rooster and duck flapped onto the railings. "But what about me?" squealed the pig. "I'm too fat to crawl under the gate, and I certainly can't fly over." "I can help," said Clarissa, and using all her cleverness, she jiggled the latch with her nose until the gate slid open and the pig pushed through. "I can see the pennants," cried the rooster. "We're almost there." The happy animals started up the last hill towards the fair, and Clarissa began to shut the gate. Then she stopped. Being helpful and being smart had brought her this far, but it wasn't far enough. She wanted to go to the fair too, even if she was just an ordinary cow. Even if Fiona and Tessie laughed to see her there, even if Mr. Larson was very angry. Maybe sometimes, she thought, you just have to be brave and go after what you want. "Wait for me," she called out. "I'm going to the fair too." The animals turned in their tracks. "Hooray!" shouted the rabbit. "Hooray!" shouted all the lost and found animals. "You led the way, Clarissa," said the pig, and the little band waddled, hopped, walked, and flapped its way up the hill. Meanwhile, there was a consternation at the fair. "Where can my duck be?" cried a freckled-faced girl. "And who has got my goat?" asked someone else. "I'll give a fat reward to anyone who can find my prize pig," said a man in overalls. Just then Mr. Larson and Pete looked up and saw Clarissa coming over the ridge of the hill. "What's she doing here?" exclaimed Mr. Larson. "As if we didn't have enough problems." But the next instant the rabbit, the duck, the rooster, the goat, and the pig trooped over the hill behind Clarissa. "Clarissa found the lost animals," shouted Pete, "and she led them back to where they belong." Finally Clarissa was at the fair, and what sights she saw! Striped tents, banners, and balloons, the midway, the merry-go-round, and the giant Ferris wheel. She breathed in the wonderful smells of hay and fruit pies and farm animals and tractor engines. She heard the burst of fireworks and the music of the calliope. Then she heard her own name. As Clarissa turned, a little girl slipped a garland of daisies around her neck. "Hooray for Clarissa!" shouted the crowd that had gathered around her. "This is your blue ribbon day," claimed the pig. "You've always been smart, and you've always been good," Pete told Clarissa. "Today you've proved that you are also strong and brave and adventurous. Welcome to the fair." But that's not the end of Clarissa's story. One day, when summer was over and Mr. Larson was thinking seriously about bringing in the corn, he received a visit from Mr. A.J. Nettleford. "I've been looking for a cow," Mr. Nettleford said, "a very special cow." Fiona and Tessie looked up expectantly. "This cow will help me promote good health, along with my dairy products. So you see she has to be just more than a pretty face," he said, passing by Tessie. "And I don't want one of those bossy cows either," he looked sharply at Fiona. "I want a cow that's bright and brave and creative. She should be easy to get along with, but not afraid to stand up for herself. I've heard from folks around here that said you might have such a cow." "I'll say," said Pete, "that description fits Clarissa to a T." And that's how Clarissa became famous. That's how her plain but good and intelligent face came to be on billboards, on milk cartons, and on the shiny Nettleford dairy trucks that travel all over Wisconsin. Clarissa's success did not really change life on the Larson farm. Fiona was still bossy, and Tessie was still self-centered, but Clarissa continued to tolerate them with her good-natured patience. But she never again thought of herself as an ordinary cow. Clarissa knew she was a winner, and she saw more blue ribbon days ahead.